Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with our tennis pro, our architecture star, and so much more. Local friend, John Riggio, hailing from beautiful New Jersey, our next door neighbor here in New York. And this man is legend. I met him as an architect and talked about his amazing work. Still do, by the way. And then only to find out that he has had this amazing career and history in the tennis pro world. And he's always here sharing some of his amazing stories, showing some pictures. And really, I mean, I could listen to you all day. You need your own like 24-hour show. John, welcome back today. How you doing? You feeling warmed up? Did you play any tennis this week?
Yes, of course. Yes. Yes, thank you. How are you? Everything is good here.
Great. Well,
And
we're
of
excited you're
course,
back.
the
Tell us a
weather's
little bit
stay.
about who you are.
Yes, my name is John Riggio. And a lot of times I talk about my architect profession, but I also have stories about the past years ago when I used to play pro tennis.
Yep.
And there's so many stories to talk about. I have even more stories to continue from the last podcast to fit in more information, all kinds of interesting things about tennis. And so today, I'd like to just continue on and talking about some interesting things that had happened. I think last week I was talking about when I played at Alley Pond this is in Queens, New York, inside New York City, where I had my own tennis center. And there was another player called Mark Schumacher. And I told the story about how he really wanted to get one of the rackets that I was using, the blah blah Pro Stock, and he went and bought one and everything like that. And it turns out it took me a while to really remember this whole story. But what happened was, um, I remember I continued to play some more matches later on against Mr. Schumacher. It was with the Perot group, and he was still coming with the group from the National Tennis Center. And we had at least two pretty good matches. One match, I think he used the Babolat racket, and the next match, he decided to change rackets. After all those years, he decided to move on to a new racket, a different one. And I think the racket he moved on to wasn't as good as the Babolat, I felt. So I was able to win those matches. I was really at the height of playing better and better and better. And but he was there and he was still playing tennis, so that is pretty good. And one thing about Mark Schumacher is that he was friendly when I met him at Alley Pond. In fact, I had to remember some things. In fact, he invited me over to his house. What happened is he wasn't really from the area in New York. He was from another state, and he moved there with his wife and children, and he was living right in the same neighborhood of where I lived in Jericho, where I grew up
Mm-hmm.
in my parents' house. And he was living just maybe not even 10 blocks away, just to the east in the same area. And so I think one day he invited me to stop over. I stopped over there and met his wife, met his children. I remember he had at least two children. Talked to him for a few minutes. And so that was pretty good. It turns out he was playing the pro tennis for a long time, and that's why he moved over here and everything to play near the tennis center. And he had a job to really give himself money to pay for everything. He was involved in the financial world and stockbroking. And so he was also doing that kind of career. And as far as like his sponsors, I just remembered he's sponsored by Nike clothing. You know, the Nike has sneakers and clothes and everything like that for sports. So he was sponsored by the Nike, and he also bought the racket. It turns out he bought the racket I remember from the same pro shop that was right down the road in Hicksville. So he did have some connection with the pro shop there. So that's pretty good. And so I think everything like that was going pretty good. And I think the strangest thing also is I think in the weeks later, there was the story where Mark Schumacher, I came home and like years ago, things from home and things from pro tennis are two different worlds. So I wasn't really thinking about anything with what's happening at home. But someone had come over to me, a neighborhood friend, and he said that this person, Mark Schumacher, was shot to death at his house. And he looked just like me. They thought maybe I was the one who was shot to death. And it took me some time to really think between home and pro tennis. But it turns out what I was told in the follow-up was that they did see someone go up to his house and run away with a gun, and it was a female wearing all white. And from that, I guess after there was an investigation, they told me that it was really someone they assumed was from the National Tennis Center. And this whole thing really happened. I think they did make an arrest for someone who really did go up and shoot and kill him right at his house there,
How
which
old
was
was
pretty
he?
sad. Yeah, that was pretty sad. I don't know whatever happened with the court case.
Wow.
In fact, I was just remembering, I don't know how badly they were really able to get the person who did this and really get them for killing him. But
Oh,
I think something like that happened. I don't have the exact numbers on what had happened, and but that is the story. So it turns out it was a female that they identified, and they must have had some witnesses, maybe some video of what was happening there. And so that was a really strange thing that happened to him, and that was pretty sad. I think one interesting thing about Mark Schumacher, just as far as his playing, is if I was to just compare, say, Mark Schumacher with Mats Wilander, I think Mats Wilander at the time, particularly in 1987, I always remember this whole thing with him also telling me about getting more publicity, getting some magazine advertisements, paying to get some pictures in some sport magazines. And the only interesting thing is that I think Mark Schumacher, with like his ideas to play with the better racket and legal racket and everything, that really made him excel. And he was able to beat me in a couple matches. He was able to play the top tournaments. And but I think Mats Wilander wasn't really thinking the same way. In fact, I think with Mats Wilander, he has 0 wins against me. I played him when I was a junior,
wow.
so right to the end with Perot, and I was always able to win. And but I think Mats Wilander sort of liked the playing like at the U.S. Open type tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
There's really good publicity for him, so that's what he concentrated at. But I think just comparing Mark Schumacher, he was able to strive past and go up to those top tournaments because he came and played me over at the Sutton East, where we were always playing the top tournaments at that location. And so I think that is one interesting thing. I think as far as Masvidal, one thing, there was a couple things. One was I played him at the start of the 87 US Open. It was on television, and I won the match. And so that was a really big thing there. But I think you see that he was still really in on that US Open, where they let him continue on to play, even though he wasn't really winning the matches to advance. So I don't know how that happened. So that was a little strange. And then uh, the one interesting thing about Masvidal that is a good thing is that
Mm-hmm.
whenever they told him to come and play me, at least he showed up and he played the match. He might not have won the match, but at least he played a good match. I think I was maybe making him think about how he can get a better racket. I think, but he didn't really go and try to get the Babolat Pro stock. He just stayed with the rackets he had. Maybe there was a kid selling illegal rackets there at the tennis center, so I don't know what happened. Um, so what happened with that is, so that was really one good thing about him, that he at least did that. And I think from those years, I think there were some interesting things at this time with Mark Schumacher is I have some photographs
Oh,
of
wow.
myself at that time. I don't have too many pictures of myself at that time. I have a casual photograph. I can just share it with you now. So let me
Sure.
go over to share this picture. Um, okay, so let's go over to this here. Let me just unshare this for 1 second.
Yeah, don't worry,
Okay,
it's not shared yet.
now let's share it again. Let's go
Okay.
to the Facebook. There it is. Okay, good.
Awesome.
Let me just move this over to here. Oh,
Okay.
okay. We can't see that if it's over here. Okay, so then I have to just do it like this.
Okay.
All right, so you can see the Facebook picture here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let
Yep.
me head over to the Facebook picture. And then to the albums. One thing is,
Me in the 90s. Yeah.
okay, so then can you see the enlarged picture here?
I see you with the car.
So this is in the same neighborhood there in Jericho. This is the house I grew up in. This has the car I was driving at that time in the 1990s. And I'm there just in front of the car. So I just have a nice casual picture of myself. This isn't a big deal. And this is just some pictures of the same time. And this is a picture of the Broadway Mall. For some reason, I took a picture of this. It
Oh
shows
my
like the old
gosh.
Sears in the background and the Broadway Mall to the left
Oh
side.
my gosh. I know that place. Yes.
And
Oh,
this was the Broadway Mall is an interesting thing. So I had talked about going to the mall and my girlfriend Delight. A lot of things were happening at the mall here in the Broadway Mall in Hicksville, Long Island. It's still there. I think
I
when they
used to
built
get my nails done there up until
this,
2 years ago. Yep.
oh yeah, wow, great. They had as soon as they built the IKEA there, it was really big with
I
people
know.
from Queens, New York. And when I later on, when I moved into Queens, New York, and originally moved over to Flushing, uh, everyone knew about this area because everyone was driving from Queens, New York out to IKEA in the Broadway Mall. So everyone knew this area. But originally, when I was younger, this is where all the things happened with Delilah, all kinds of things here at the Center Point. I think just a couple blocks away is the
Mm-hmm.
sports shop from this location,
Uh-huh.
just a couple blocks away. So this is like one interesting picture from the past. And I think it shows some old cars from that time too, the same kind of cars. Everyone was driving the exact same thing. So then just close this.
Now they have all the electric car charging stations there, by the way.
Yes, I think also in this time in the 90s, so for like 87, I started going to college. I was going to college wearing my sweats just to get like an idea what's happening. And I started to make some new friends. And from that, I have another picture. So this is in when I went to college at NYIT. I made some new friends, and they were really impressed with me. So they had this new fraternity, the Omega Delta Phi,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to do some things with them with the putting these ads in, and they knew me from telling them about tennis. I met them a lot of times. I was wearing my tennis sweats and things like that, and they made me a star member of their fraternity. So I've been a member of
Omega
that. They
Delta
really
Phi.
liked me, and this is one pretty good thing that I had there. So then this is next interesting thing is now that we were talking about this whole thing with that horrible thing that happened to the tennis player. Let me just stop sharing this. There was some interesting other dangers. I think I had told a few stories last time on the podcast about some dangers happening with some things threatening to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some very interesting dangers against me as a tennis player. And they came through some things about threats to me.
Oh,
They didn't go to me, still went to my sponsor. I had no idea what was happening. But what happened is at Sutton East, when we were playing the best tournaments, even though we're playing the best tournaments, there's still that percentage of problems. There's still the percentage of things, same type of things, cheating, illegal tennis rackets. switching the scores, just telling them that they won, trying to steal the tournaments. But there was one other problem that was much worse was they put threats in that they wanted to try to shoot me if I won the match.
Oh my goodness. Who knew it was this
Yes,
crazy?
yes, yes. So at Sutton East in Manhattan,
Wow.
what developed in Sutton East was, for one, the thing with Sutton East was going so excellent that they started to allow the players to come and stay at the apartments in the building just to the south, just next to it. And they were staying there, and they could stay there sort of like today they have things like the bed and breakfast you can do where you could stay at someone's apartment. They were already doing something like that for the players. So the players can come there, they could stay in an apartment, and this way they have all the time to put their clothes in. They can change their clothes, use the bathroom, have something to eat. And then when it's time to play the match, all they do is just walk right across the street and they walk right into the entrance for Sutton East. And I have a picture of that. I could show it to you in a minute. And what happens is there is everything was going good with that because they could walk across to play the match. I think the only problem with that is for some reason I was told that there were threats coming through that some players, uh, if I beat them in the match, they'd want to very possibly try to shoot and kill me after the match when I left in the afternoon. So what happens is with each player, what they started to do is they had someone, maybe the supervisor. At that time, they had a new supervisor called Billy, and they might have him go find the player. He'd go over to the apartment building, go over, find him, ring the doorbell, physically look at him, and then he would maybe call over to the tennis center, and that's when they would tell me, okay, it's safe to walk out and go to my car, and I would walk down the sidewalk, get in my car and drive away. And so that is what was happening. And so this is something that was very interesting. They didn't threaten me directly, but that had to happen at the end of each afternoon when we were playing certain players, that they said that there was potentially danger that they would really come out and try to shoot and kill me. So they really couldn't handle losing the match against me, which isn't too good. That isn't really very sportsmanlike. I mean, with pro tennis, even though
Mm,
there are these dangers, they're not really
no.
supposed to do anything with that kind of behavior. It's really unsportsmanlike. I think usually when people played matches, particularly the end match, they uh, they were usually given a consolation prize. Like a lot of times you might see on television, they give someone who's like in second, they'd give them a dish instead of the trophy. So they'd always get like a little consolation prize. But I guess for some players, it wasn't really enough. They really thought that they have to win. And they tried to do this thing where they would try to kill me. For all I know, they might have already tried to shoot at me or things like that. There were some incidents there. One was someone taking that Mercedes-Benz, the Gloria Vanderbilt lease for me for 6 months. And when they drove it around Manhattan, someone did shoot into the side of the car. And that was on the driver's side of the car. And they dressed up like me. They put like a tennis hat on, like sweats, drove around. And something did happen there. So there were these dangers going on. I was lucky they really couldn't do something to me, and it was good my sponsors were able to take the precautions of doing that kind of thing there. And so that was one interesting thing. I think one thing about Sutton also with all these kind of dangers and problems, there are still those things with the cheating and trying to switch the match. Unfortunately, there was one big tournament I played there, and the player was someone that they had sent for me to teach them. So anyone that is learning from a player, the chances of losing the match are increased because they already played you a few times. They know you taught them how to play, so they might have an idea of how you're going to play the match, and then there's a potential you could win. So this player, we played in the final of a tournament, and it appeared that he won the match. Unfortunately, he had a cheat racket. So when he left the courts, they checked his racket, and it was really one of those rackets that they were selling at the National Tennis Center that were illegal, and they had to cancel that match. Now the win didn't go to me. What happened is they had to reschedule another match. So this idea of them using the illegal tennis racket, they sort of got away with causing me a big problem of playing, and it seemed like I lost the match. But I had to replay the match against them. He used the legal tennis racket, and I won pretty clearly. And so that was good that I could win the match, but we still had to go to that struggle of stopping them from saying they won, and really had to have the racket checked and exposed that it was an illegal tennis racket. So that is one thing that was always a problem there. And so I think so that thing was very interesting. I think there was more stories of crazy things happening like that. So one thing I was doing, I was still researching some more things from the past, and I was able to find the courts that Ross Perot bought for me to play through the winter time. So this is after Sutton East. Ross Perot bought my contract for the $30 million gross number. And originally I was playing at the Westbury courts, Old Westbury in Long Island. And what they did was for the winter time, as it started to get cold and it was getting dark earlier, they bought this court, and I could just share this over with you in 2 seconds.
Please go ahead. Oh my gosh. So hold on.
So I was able to find the
There you go.
location. I had to really think of the past located where it was, and I have it here. And it's just a pretty simple set of courts. Let's get it right here.
Okay.
Okay, there it is, because it was on the North Shore Tennis. Okay, so first I originally started looking for it, and I found this map that is listing all the tennis courts, and I had to really think of where I drove. I don't have any writing of where about this tennis court that he had bought, but this is the tennis court. It's right over here. It says here 131 Glenwood Road in Glenwood Landing. It's right next to Glen Cove. This is in the North Shore of Long Island, New York. And this is the tennis center. So what happened is, while I was playing on the Westbury courts, a lot of those matches were televised, and I ended up playing with the Japan team at that time. But they renovated this whole tennis center. And I think today, the tennis center here, it still says that it is a tournament training center. So they still use this building as for tournament tennis. And this was really the one of the style tennis centers they had. It had the same thing. They were renovating this whole thing, supposedly putting a new entrance in here. And this has the building here, and then it has the courts next to it. And this just shows an aerial view of the building. Pretty simple. I wasn't the one who selected this to use it, but this was really the idea to get me through the winter at that time. But then my contract was sold, so I didn't really get to play here. I only visited it a few times to see when I'm going to start playing, if the renovation is finished. There's another tennis center right down the road over here that is the Glen Cove. It's the Glen Head Racket Club, which looks somewhat similar. It has like a brick entrance and everything like that. So at the time, I was looking around here at the different tennis centers, and that's how I remember this whole thing, that this was the tennis center that Ross Perot Sport Group, they was using this. And I think as my contract got sold, what happened is some of the players started to use the tennis center But in fact, at that point, I wasn't allowed to use the tennis center because since my contract was sold, some players went and played over there, but I had to wait so that I couldn't play at this location. It was already finished and sold. So that is what was happening there. And but they did do renovate this, and I think this was supposed to have been more of like a tennis center, similar to like Alley Pond, where I would have like an indoor court. You would have a clubhouse with the showers and everything like that. And I think the only notice this one is made of a metal construction. It isn't a bubble. So that was sort of like I've already played in some kind of tennis centers that had the metal
Mm-hmm.
structure like this. They're pretty good. It's a slightly different experience, but it is pretty good. It's a nice solid thing, and I think that's what they had made there. And let's see this here. So let me stop sharing this.
Sure. Great. And we have
Okay,
1 minute left. Go
oh,
ahead.
okay, that's okay.
Always happens, right? Go ahead.
Okay. So I think yeah, so from the last time I was talking about was some things was the Reebok. So I think the Reebok it really sort of rolled over into 1997.
Okay.
And I think
Hmm.
one interesting thing was when they listed my contract in the newspaper over here on the East Coast, they had to use a law term, and I think the law term was called Ron Devlin as my name.
Okay.
So yeah, that's another name they had to put in,
Wow.
substituting my name, and that had to do with something with how they do the processing of the name and who the sponsor has to pay the fee to put the name. But my name wasn't going to be my natural name in there anyway.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go under Carlos Scipio at that time. That was going to go in the newspaper. And I was told that the name Carlos Scipio, they put it in on the West Coast, but I haven't been able to get a copy of that. But it wasn't going to go under my natural name anyway, because they have that rule with the player names and everything like that.
Got it.
And I think just thinking about the end of the contract with the Reebok was I was just thinking about the very beginning of playing. And one of them was when I went out to play with my parents and I was there. My father taught me how to play some tennis. My mother taught me how to play some tennis. And I was using those old wood rackets they had, and I broke the
Oh
wood
my
rackets.
gosh.
And my father could tell I was going to play pro tennis in the future. And so the story came out that my father knew about pro tennis, and he was giving me advice also that pro tennis to play, you don't want to ever cheat. You always want to play
Mm-hmm.
an honest game of tennis, and if you have the ability, you can go move up through playing tennis, and you're never going to have problems. They're always going to sponsors are going to want to back you.
Yep. And
If you play and you're playing an honest game is really the best way to success. And that is really one lesson I remember from just talking about the end of the tennis games with the Reebok to just like starting off with just getting an idea of playing pro tennis was really just to play an honest game of tennis and never
wow.
cheat.
Well, thank you for that. And you do amazing. Follow you on Facebook, John Riggio, our pro tennis player. And unfortunately, we're out of time. We'll talk again next week, I'm sure. Always a pleasure. And thanks for sharing the screen.
Okay, thanks. Goodbye.
Bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.